Hello everybody, I'm very happy to be here today to share some thoughts about blended language MOOCs for inclusion. I'm going to reflect upon MOOCs and language MOOCs in particular, and then provide some background knowledge on our latest European project called Moonlight, and we'll talk about some experiences with some existing blended MOOCs, and then we'll concentrate on the very blended MOOC that we have developed called Open Doors. In fact, it is a series of LMOOCs, not just one. I'll mention the design process, the course structure and activities, and some other considerations before reaching the final conclusions. Okay, what's a MOOC? We know that it is an acronym for Massive Open Online Course. Massive refers to its potentially unlimited participation. Open to the open access via the web. Online to the fact that you access it via internet, and it is typically on a dedicated platform. There are many of them these days: EDX, Coursera, FutureLearn, Myriadax. And finally, it is a course because it has learning goals, structure, content, activities, evaluation, and certification like any other course. However, it is interesting to mention that most MOOCs violate one of these letters, one of these elements, and either are not totally massive or totally open or totally online, etc. There are many challenges associated to MOOCs, and the literature is full of articles stating them and reflecting upon them. Just like, for example, the adaptability, because the participant profile is very heterogeneous. The feedback, because it is hard to provide feedback when the ratio is 1 to 10,000. The first MOOC that I ever developed, it was on professional English, and I launched it for the first time in the year 2013, and it had 40,000 students. So you can imagine the challenge of providing feedback to such a large number of students. And then, of course, there is the issue of recognition and certification, which is linked to institutional issues and the very, very important topic of the business model attached to it, so that the institution actually supports and provides such certification, which is needed in most Western societies, at least. Okay, and as for LMOOC, this is an acronym that was first published in 2014, and it refers to MOOCs for second languages. Right, the Moonlight project was a European project that it actually hasn't finished yet. It will finish this autumn, later on this year, and the acronym corresponds to Massive Open Online Courses Enhancing Linguistic and Transversal Skills. That means soft skills for social inclusion and employability. There you have the website of this project, which is very informative. Actually, it's worth visiting. The general goal of this project was to explore the potential role of MOOCs in the promotion of the social inclusion and employability of displaced people like refugees and migrants. And many questions arise at the beginning. Is open online language learning appropriate for refugees and migrants? What is their level of literacy and digital literacy in particular? What are their cultures like from a social, learning and digital viewpoint? What are the needs of the teachers at the support centers, ONGs, etc.? What are their plans? What are their learning needs? Who are they? There are a number of experiences of using MOOCs in formal education. For example, a leveling module for first-year students of English in the degree of tourism at UNED, the Spanish Open University where I worked, which was a successful experience back at the end of the year 2013, and it was very much an autonomous course. Before, it was like a leveling course for students who were going to start their degree and allegedly would have very different levels of English as a second language. But at the same time, it was guided, and it was very much linked to the professional English course that they were about to start working on in autumn. Also, there is an EFL, teaching with complex, remote and secluded environmental conditions, and students did show to be keen to engage into non-traditional methods. A MOOC can be used to supplement a course on a second language methodology. And what do we gain by that? Well, we gain the engagement with a much wider community of practice than if we were just studying in the confinements, in the limit, within the boundaries of any classroom, which will probably contain around 20 students, 10-20 students for second language classrooms. We can also access an extraordinary amount of online materials and loads of, in inverted commas, expert voices that can help us practice, contrast. They can serve as models. They can help us with our production and be of great help. And also the identification of troublesome knowledge. For in any course, there are some areas that are particularly challenging. Okay, incorporating professional English MOOCs at university made students more aware of the practicalities of their learning, their need for self-development. They became better critical thinkers, better decision makers, etc. Now, the series that we developed in the last 2 years was called Open Doors, and that was the name of a series of Spanish for immediate purposes. And we first started with the analysis of the profiles, which led to the conclusion that MOOCs in general are not fulfilling their integrative goal. When MOOCs first appeared around 2008, they were presented as the solution to the democratization of knowledge. But in the end, after analyzing the participant profile of every course, it was concluded that they were mostly university students, professionals from Western countries who could access regular formal education anyway. So that idea of being a strategy, a modality that could help students access education if they didn't have at that moment any other means for training, it just wasn't happening. And at the time, there was also a serious refugee crisis, and we received information on the very complex situation situations of displaced people, which were leading to exclusion, poverty, and radicalization. So their unstable situations, and also the overcrowded and underfunded NGOs and support centers in our country and the countries in our region, were also a matter of concern. So students would only be able to access free courses in these underfunded centers, very few hours a week, with very basic materials and limited resources. And the analysis that were undertaken on existing MOOCs and language MOOCs reveal their inadequacy and the level and the need to build more inclusive courses, so that the very people we were aiming to target would actually respond and react to them in a positive way. The path that we started when we decided to build Open Doors, the Open Doors language MOOC series, started with contacting 20 national NGOs that were involved in language teaching already, and they were invited by us to a series of meetings. And then we undertook a needs analysis via questionnaires, and there we learned a number of very important factors regarding their needs. We learned what the refugees' profile was in our area, which proved to be very heterogeneous, both from a personal and from an occupational viewpoint, also regarding their academic level and qualifications and their digital levels and skills. So we couldn't take for granted that they were going to have access to computers or be able to be fluent in English or any other second language, for that matter. The profile was extremely heterogeneous. The teachers revealed that they needed support for the methodological and aspects of the courses, and we started a number of training sessions on MOOCs with them, so that they would know what they were, the concept, and get acquainted with this modality. And then the first design decisions were made. They were the ones, both teachers and refugees and migrants, they were the ones who decided the topics of the MOOCs they considered to be more relevant, more prominent. And they were, as I said before, immediate needs, language for immediate needs, and we underwent a design thinking process where they identified the topics that those courses had to cover. So as you can see here, the topics were not the standard ones that you see in any standard language book or language course. They were administration and bureaucracy, routines and daily life, traveling and moving around, going to the doctor, integration and socialization, looking for housing, training and employment, and defending rights. As you can see, this is rather different from the typical courses where you get like physical descriptions in great detail about clothes and faces and that sort of thing. Now, the courses were about 6 weeks each, and this was decided after so many years of undertaking MOOCs, because the great challenge of these courses is abandonment, and it has been established that 6 weeks is an amount of time before interest starts declining and commitments start arising, other commitments. So this was established that way, and that would correspond more or less to 1 European credit. So because it's like 6 weeks, 6 times 4, so about 25 working hours, which is what 1 European credit is anyway. And the level would be between A1 and A2. So the teaching teams of these courses was a mixture of teachers from the support groups and also UNED teachers. It was the refugees together with their teachers who developed the scripts for the videos after having established the structure under our supervision, and they were the protagonists of the videos as well. Not only the script writers, but the protagonists. They used UNED's studios, recording studios, and there you have an example of 2 refugees practicing their the dialogue that would constitute one of the units. All 4 second language competences were considered for the courses: writing, reading, speaking, and listening. And it was of utmost importance that the whole course would be expressed in inclusive language, a language that would be not offensive, not discriminating or discriminatory, and it would all the time be encouraging, motivating, and inclusive. And the same thing with the pedagogy. This is what our platform, the UNED Open edX MOOC platform, looks like. I would say that it is rather rudimentary. I would like to see a lot more intelligence, artificial intelligence, and more exciting tools there, but it is has a clear interface, and it can provide a good way to structure the materials, the videos, and also the texts, and the evaluation. And it is, as I said, it is very intuitive to follow, and also there are forums to engage in interaction, and other tools like a peer-to-peer facility where a student writes an exercise or an activity and then sends it off to 3 other students who provide feedback on the first person's activity, and also they in turn they send their own work through, and 3 other students correct it, and so on and so forth. Of course, they provide feedback following the teacher's advice that has been provided beforehand. Right. There was an enormous amount of support provided because we couldn't assume any familiarity either with the platform, with the Spanish language, with MOOCs, or with digital tools for that matter. So, as I said, we provided 40 mini videos on all the aspects that we thought that could be challenging for them, like how to enroll for the course, how to do it, the structure, the different types of activities, how to listen to an audio, how to participate in the forums, how to do a peer-to-peer activity, evaluate the course, how to ask for a certificate, etc., etc. Up to 14. And they were all subtitled if requested in English, Spanish, French, and Arabic, which were considered to be the 4 most common languages. As I mentioned before, there were some limitations due to the platform. So, it was also considered that peer-to-peer a peer-to-peer activity where, as I mentioned before, students would provide feedback to their peers' work would be perhaps challenging at the beginning when they were, because this would be their first experience with the Spanish, the first experience with MOOCs, etc., and also with online learning. So we decided to leave it for the second course. There they had a peer-to-peer activity, but not at the beginning. And also there was a Facebook page called Open Doors that is still open if you care to visit it. There you have the link, where they felt more at ease in some cases to ask questions, really basic questions like, I'm lost, how do I go about to enroll in this course, will it be good for me? And it's interesting because since a social network is a lot less academicist as an environment than the MOOC itself, then students that were really behind or very self-aware, they would feel comfortable to ask very basic questions, much more than in the MOOC platform itself. So the Facebook page would fulfill a role in itself. Of course, we analyzed the types of posts, methodological, content, personal, etc. And there was a great training on the part of the facilitators to whom we explained the need to record greetings at the beginning, put their photographs up so that the students would get acquainted with them and also feel the course as not such an impersonal learning environment. They were taught on techniques to provide inclusive teaching, like, for example, to prioritize the queries, to support preferentially, to support discouraged students, and also students who showed evidence of being extremely proactive. Because if the queries of those students were solved, then in turn those students could support the teachers and behave like monitors themselves. So it was like a cascade effect. Also, facilitators were encouraged to use an intro language, that is, not to hesitate to use the students' mother tongue if they spoke it, just to facilitate the beginning of the course. And also not take any literacy for granted, so not assume that the student needs to have any knowledge of Spanish or digital skills, etc. So about the students, well, interestingly, they all had mobile devices. Hardly any of them had computers, but all they were familiar with in terms of their mobile devices was the use of Facebook. They used Facebook to be in contact with faraway family and friends, and we were very interested in knowing this in order to design the course. That's why, as I said before, we opened a Facebook page in our course as kind of a bridge that would help, especially the most reluctant students towards the course. As I've just said, the experience of these students in terms of second language learning was very heterogeneous. And as for the teachers, one very interesting factor was that the NGOs had a syllabus to cover, so they just couldn't leave aside the topics they had to cover that year in order to embrace the MOOCs. So we had to make the MOOCs engage and integrate with the face-to-face courses that they were undertaking in the support centers. So what the teachers were given by us was a list of all the lexical, grammatical, pragmatic discourse topics covered in our MOOCs, so that they could make a decision of where and when it would be most suitable for them to introduce some of the MOOC content in their face-to-face classroom. And we also provided a guide with the structure of the course, a reference to the Facebook page, also the types of activities. There were 2 layers, because we also considered that in terms of second language learning, some students like to do very intuitive work and do not require explanations or terminology, and they react against them actually, while others do. Others feel more comfortable in a more formal learning setting. So we actually provided both types of learning. We would provide a very visual and intuitive, to the point unit, but there would always be an icon that the student could click to have more explicit theoretical explanations. In that guide, we explained to the teachers that they could use the LMOOC in a variety of ways. To either totally or partially, they could select some of the contents of the MOOC. They could use it either before their face-to-face classroom and as a sort of brainstorming or diagnosis exercise during the classroom time while the lesson was being taught, either to reinforce some content or that was being tackled, or as homework. Or it could be used after a topic had been covered, just as a way to reinforce the content. The MOOC could be undertaken individually, but in many cases, since the students didn't feel confident with their skills and this new learning environment, they would prefer to work in pairs or collaboratively in larger groups. This was the case with students with low digital literacy skills and also language literacy skills. In that guide, we also provided hints regarding the periodicity, where the MOOC tool could be used, and a sample of activities for each module to link the MOOC with the classroom-based course syllabus. For example, in Module 1, practice in the classroom introducing oneself. In Module 2, bring a list of the electrical appliances where they lived and take photos with the mobile, and then comment in class on how useful they were, etc. So this way, it was possible to link classroom time with the topics that were being covered in the MOOC, like introductions and also parts of the house. Or in Module 3, when they were talking about administrative work, when you go to a new host country, well, what paperwork have you done so far yourself in the country where you are, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so teachers were asked to register in the courses, to follow their students' progress and be aware firsthand of their potential difficulties, and this was important especially for A1 students. And they were asked to bring their own devices to the classroom. We were determined not to face them with further digital challenges. They use classroom time also to work on either oral skills, which the MOOCs weren't so strong on, and also those aspects that are linguistically and communicatively more challenging. So the results, just a few results on this series of MOOCs that we undertook in this blended setting. Over 90% of them were from outside the European Union and North America, Syria, Cameroon, Venezuela. Approximately 2,200 there were 2,200 students registered, and more than 30% of them finished the course, which was our star result, because as you probably know, most language MOOCs have a completion rate of between 7 and 15%. So this was like more than double, and that was really our most encouraging and promising result. Of those who finished, they had completed at least 98% of the activities, because you can do a course and gain a certificate for it if you have done 80% of the activities. But in our case, they went all the way to doing 98%, and the use of the form throughout the course was continuing. And another very positive thing that we observed was that as the course went by, the interventions in the forums became longer, more elaborate, more inclusive, and we got a more positive impression altogether. Okay, finally, it is hard to define which elements are responsible for the success of these courses, but our intuition is that it was the compendium, it was the addition of all these methodological elements. The challenges were great at the beginning due to the very heterogeneous user profile, and also the emotional trauma undergone by refugees and migrants in many cases who risk exclusion. But we took enormous attention in course design to cover the didactic versatility that we thought was necessary, the inclusion, persistent motivation. We sent reminders on a weekly basis, encouraging students not to drop out, and telling them how the percentage of course that was there left, and the most interesting topics that they were going to cover the following week if they remain in the course, etc., etc. The teachers reported benefits are difficult to quantify because they are of a very personal nature, and they are very eloquent from this qualitative viewpoint. And another very interesting result is that the 20 NGOs have, through the teachers and the refugees, have reported that they require 3 further language MOOCs, one on basic digital literacy, another one on B1 Spanish, and a third one on teacher training for blended learning. And we consider these to be highly stimulating results. So if you want to know more, please connect on this course, and we are going to be running the next edition of these courses very, very soon. So hopefully we'll see you there. Please let us know. Bye-bye for now.